Looks like I'm just making sure that we are in fact live, and we are. I think so. Yeah, here we go. Live, a Monday night live this time. We've been doing so many of these live streams because the election's happening and so many people are paying attention. They want to know every little detail about what's going on. So a treat especial this evening. Holy cow, we got a whole lineup tonight. We've got here just next to me, Mr. Sunshine Baby. Thanks for joining this evening.
Good to be here.
Thank you. Just below me, Clayton, thank you so much. And next to him is Alex Zoltan, both writers for True North, and glad to have you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's really get into it. And I didn't realize, but Jasper, you didn't even know about this story coming. Well, you heard about it, but you didn't know any of the details going into this.
None. No.
Why don't you tell us what you know? I'm just curious.
From the post-debate English post-debate scrum?
Yeah, that's right.
What I know, the limited knowledge that I know is Ezra Levant was there, got into an argument with somebody, and then for reasons of national security, they canceled the literal most important press conference questions with supposed answers out of in Canadian history. Like, this is the biggest movement, the biggest pivotal time in Canadian history. We now know that Mark Carney, due to the gentleman below me from the French debate, post-debate scrum, that he believes there are two sexes. So who knows what we would have found out from this scrum should it have happened. And they canceled it under the guise of some form of, security issue. That's what I know. I haven't looked into it more. I was going to watch videos earlier today, but then I knew we were doing this. So let's see what happened.
Yeah, and this is a big surprise to me because Jasper, you cover a lot of this news just like I do. So this is good because we got two actual journalists and then two YouTube pundits. I guess we call ourselves that because we're reporting on what the actual journalists are out there doing, digging up the real stuff, and we're talking about basically what's going on and giving it a spotlight, as you would, right? So the two of us doing that job, the two below actually going out and getting these news stories. So really good point, actually, that you brought up that there's information that we don't know about Mark Carney, and the only reason why we know what little that we do know is, well, the media isn't really happy to dig this up for us. So we have real journalists that are out there asking these hard questions. And I thought it was really interesting, Alex, that you brought up this question during the French debate. Now, there was a lot of flack. People were saying, well, why are you bringing that up? You're supposed to be talking about what happened during the debate. And it's like, well, hold on. No, this is an open game. This is where journalists have a chance to ask questions that maybe didn't get brought up during the debate that are maybe more pertinent. Maybe more people care about these other issues, and mainstream media, they care about what they care about, but real live people care about what it is that they care about. Now, I'm just going to play a little clip here. I'll bring this center stage here. So this is the scene. This is the scene of the crime, as you would here, where Alex Zoltan, yours truly down there, was able to ask a question. I was just astonished. Holy cow, you're like right up front stage. Amazing that you got past all of the other reporters, and we'll get into how that actually occurred. But this was the question that came up.
So Alex Zoltan with True North. If you thought my friend's question was odd, you're going to love this one.
I'm glad you self-assessed that. Okay.
How many genders are there?
In terms of sex, there are two. Thank you.
My follow-up question then, do you believe that women, biological women, have the right to their own spaces, their own sports, their own change rooms, their own prisons, their own homeless shelters?
I think this is Canada, and that as a general objective, yes. But we work where we value all Canadians for who they are, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Alex, so the $1 million question here is, well, first and foremost, this is Canada. I'm glad we've established that. We know where we're at and who the prime minister is and why you were there to ask him this question. Why was it that you asked that particular question? Because I know you had a bunch in your bonnet you were ready to ask, but that one was the one that came out, and that was the one you thought was most pertinent for that situation.
So we collabed on a whole bunch of different questions with our editor. And so we had, for all of the leaders, a bunch. Like I had a notepad in front of me. I wish I kept it. I think I left it at one of the hotel rooms. But it had, maybe 12 pages of different questions written on it. And it was probably the most aggressive and most risky question I could have asked. But the reason I asked it is because he was being such a jerk to Cian Bexte. And he said when Cian Bexte asked this question, because the night before, it's really hard to speak publicly. Like anybody who says it isn't is a liar. It's pretty nerve-wracking. And so the night before, I was really, really nervous. I was like, the worst thing that he could do is tell me that I asked a stupid question and humiliate me. And that's what he did to Cian. He tried to. He said to Cian, that was a very odd question. It was very rude of him. So that's why I said, if you thought my friend's question was odd, you're really going to love this one. Then well,
why don't we get into that? Because I have his question up here. Let's have a look at what Cian asked. And this was just before your question.
Just to follow up, if I may, your entire campaign does seem to be predicated on putting you in the front and hiding the people that stood in lockstep with Justin Trudeau for the last 10 years. You're kind of hoping that Canadians won't connect the dots, that the people standing behind you in your caucus walked in lockstep with him. Regardless of what you say right now, Stephen Guilbeault made the carbon taxes life work. The man that moved Paul Bernardo from a maximum security prison is now your chief of staff. I'm wondering how you reconcile this and how you can trust their judgment when they thought those ideas were good ideas.
I'd say a couple of things to that rather odd question. First is that the candidates in this election for the Liberal Party, I mean, you go and see when I make an announcement. I don't think I've seen you at any of them, but next time you can come. And you will see a wide announcement. I don't think I've seen you at any of them, but next time you can come. And you will see a wide range of the candidates that are there presenting themselves. So, for example, with respect.
So yeah, it cuts short there, but essentially it repeated there because he was saying you kicked me out when I tried to ask these questions at other places. Cian Bexte was kicked out of those places, but why was it an odd question? Like this is the part that really gets me. Mark Carney coming out and like you said, that's one nerve-wracking thing to be told that's a stupid question of yours. Mark Carney.
Cian's a veteran of this, right? He's done this many times. So, I didn't think that Cian was humiliated or anything at all, but I would have felt humiliated, and so he was just being rude, Mark Carney. He was being rude.
Well, it is rude because I mean, it wasn't a trick question at all. It was you have the same cabinet as Justin Trudeau. Why would we expect anything different? Yeah, he lists off some of the accomplishments of the cabinet members in negative light, which I mean is deservingly so, but I mean it's not really a case of wow, that was a horrible question. It was a pretty streamlined question.
And then for him to say I don't recognize you, I haven't seen you at any of my events, when he had been removed from his events by the police, was just outrageous, frankly, to see that. He was poking us, and so that's why I poked back. I wasn't going to accept it.
So how did you land on that question though? Why? I get your pushback and saying
other questions. I was going to ask a question maybe about bank accounts. There were two other questions. We had a whole bunch of options, and in fact, actually, I saw he mentioned this on Juno, so I'm not sharing anything that's proprietary, let's say. But he came up with that question at the last second. His question, which was, "Is Justin Trudeau a good prime minister?" He pulled an audible and picked an entirely different question
I just want to say something about the role of independent journalists is really to answer or ask questions on behalf of Canadians, the public, just like every journalist, but more so our readers. So there's so many people who, just the fact that Cian Bexte is removed from these events and independent journalists, including one of True North's reporters. Noah Jarvis was also kicked out. Isaac Lamoureux, another. So the fact is people who read our stuff, they don't they don't get the opportunity to ask these questions often. So or even have their questions said in the political arena. So really our job is to ask those questions as independent journalists that the legacy media is not asking at all. So I think it was a valid thing. You look at the Macdonald Laurier Institute, which is a very, even just the name is very centrist. Macdonald was a conservative prime minister, Laurier a liberal. Anyway, they did a study about things such as what do people think about women female sports, transgenders in female sports, and over 50% of the people thought it was unfair that biological males are in those things. So this is a question that is a very maybe it's not the key issue of the election, but it certainly matters to people. And I think we talked to people on the street, me and Alex, afterwards about what they thought about that question, and not a single person said that Carney shouldn't have he had the duty to answer that question, whether it's to shut it down or otherwise. He had a duty to actually fully answer that, and it wasn't a hard question to ask. We even heard.
The thing that I thought was really interesting, the thing I thought was rather interesting was typically we don't hear these kinds of questions from being asked of liberals or people on the left. We often hear these questions asked of people on the right, and when they're asked these questions, it's a gotcha. But in this case, it was kind of like it almost felt like you were asking, are you at odds with even your liberal base? Because you've been at odds with a number of things, or at least you're vocalizing things that are at odds with what your cabinet has been doing over the past 10 years, this kind of thing. So where do you stand on this issue, for example? It's a hot button issue. And I thought that was really interesting because, less about what's going on in his family, more about where do you actually stand on these things? Because nobody knows anything about you. Oh, we got a muted Alex at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know anything about Mark Carney. He's the least vetted prime minister in Canadian history. And so we have a right to know how he feels about these very important issues that people are talking about around the kitchen table. And, a lot of people don't want their little girls hurt by boys, playing sports. And I've written actually myself as a crime reporter for True North about a persistent issue of men assaulting women in homeless shelters. Correction Services Canada has written a very robust and comprehensive report on the number of women who are being raped in prisons. So this is a very serious, relevant question to the society that we're in. And when the CBC, they said, well, this doesn't match the narrative of the election. Well, whose fault is that, CBC? You're the ones that set the narrative. All they want this election to be about is Donald Trump. That's all they want. And in fact, I've watched the CBC coverage of that question, and Adrienne Arsenault, I think she says, oh, are we still in Canada? As if I was importing American politics into the Canadian election by asking the question, which is absurd because as far as I'm aware, there's women in Canada too.
Well, this is crazy.
Just women in the US.
Well, this is totally crazy because, and I mean, Jasper would know this because he's been reporting on the same stuff that I've been reporting on. They've been hounding Pierre Poilievre on this gender issue for ages. And, there was Jasper, I'm sure you've reported on this, but they in scrums in the House of Parliament, asking him do you support this what was it? It was transitions for kids, and they harped him so bad that he finally broke and he just said, what you mean, irreversible surgery for kids? I'm not down with that. I'm not going to get behind that. And then they have a freak out, but there's no freak out for Carney.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was asked of him multiple times, and that's the thing, right? The legacy media gets to ask these questions to conservatives, and it's fair questions, either way. But why don't we get to hear what the liberals have to say about this issue? Yeah.
I imagine that Mark Carney's answer would have been really dissatisfactory to both sides of the political spectrum, because to those on the far left, they're upset because he says there's two biological sexes. I mean, we've
Mhm.
heard, to the end of the earth for the last 5 to 10 years that there are, in fact, an endless number of genders. So he sidestepped the question, right? He didn't say how many genders there were. He said there were 2 biological sexes, which I was saying earlier. I imagine most scientists would agree. But and then on the right, he failed to promise to secure the sanctity of women-only spaces. So he lost on both ends, in my opinion. And really, he could have made me look so stupid by just saying there are 2 biological sexes, and yes, women should have their own spaces. And what a ridiculous question! And I would have, walked away with the tail between my legs.
But you didn't. You walked away, and he was largely unhappy with you. Now let's talk about this, because there was a lot of people that were largely unhappy with the lot of you. And when I mean the lot of you, I mean independent journalists in this scenario. Let's just, I guess, without further ado, let's just get into the clip. This is how it all started. And Jasper, we're taking you along for the ride here because you didn't know about the particulars of this. So I mean, why don't we just
before we get into this, maybe
okay,
I think it would be fun for Clyde.
we got to back it up a little bit.
Yeah, to tell you how we even got a question.
Okay, fair enough.
Kind of reveal the magic trick of what independent media did. What we did is we showed up hours early. We showed up. We could have picked up our accreditation passes at 2 p.m. We were there at 1 p.m.
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed.
As soon as we got our passes, we went into the venue and we scouted the venue. We looked at where the cameras were. We looked where there were X's drawn on the ground, because we knew from convention that there would be a scrum line. We chose which seats would be the closest to a potential scrum line based off of where the cameras were positioned. We worked together. So I've never met Cian Bexley before in my entire life. Him and I love Cian Bexley. I think his work is great, but I've never met him in person before. But when we met for the first time, he said, let's start a signal chat. Let's strategize where we can sit so that we can get to the front of the line. Let's get to the front of that line 30 minutes before the media scrum begins. And so that's what we did. Ian and I were both in the front of the line 30 minutes before the scrum started. And then all the Rebel folks, because they're our buddies, like we're all like we're the underdogs. There's only 9 of us compared to 130 other people.
But the news makes it sound like you're coordinating with each other and like this
not at all
like conspiracy to commit question, like,
there was a little bit of a conspiracy between Cian and I, only in that we were strategizing to both get to the front of both lines. And I don't know, Clyde, maybe you can recall, maybe my memory is wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that when we realized one line was for the French, we graciously gave it up to the CBC Radio Canada people, because we're not going to ask a question in French. Clayton, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, one thing that was said as well is like this, and I'm sure you have the clip, but like you said, there's like this idea that we're all kind of working together, and the fact is like when you have all the legacy media don't even believe like us as independent media, you have the establishment who kick you out of their rallies. I think Pierre Poilievre's the only party leader that even let us into his press conferences. When you have like the entire establishment working to get against you, like is it a wonder that independent media kind of like rally together in sort of and kind of have a friendly thing? It's like we're all experiencing the same thing. We're not affiliated with Rebel News. We're not we don't take orders from anybody, but like, yeah, like we're going to be friendly with the people who are experiencing the same situation as us, and we're kind of exposed. We kind of are exposing similar stories, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, like, but the idea that we're all coordinating was pretty silly. Other than the fact that we're gonna be friendly with one another.
Yeah, well, I can totally see that. And the whole idea is like, if people are coming at you, you rally with the people who are also, getting it exactly. So now we figured it out. the whole trick to getting to the head of the line, getting to the front, and getting your questions is to actually get up and out of your seat and go up to where the line is, and preferably before anybody else. There's not much of a magic trick.
So just just to bring that, like, you guys were in line 30 minutes before the debate even ended. I would, like, speaking for myself, I would have been willing to stand there for 2 to 3 hours if I needed to in order to get that question. So, like, yeah, it was just a matter of independent media are hungry for this. We, like, you know, we don't ever get a chance to even ask a question to these people, so we're going to try our hardest to get there. So sorry to cut you off there, Alex.
No, don't be sorry at all. It's really that simple. Like, if you want to get something, just show up early and work hard. And like, we just outfoxed them, and it really upset them, and they should hate the game and not the players.
Well, before we get into this clip, I just want to set the stage here. So this guy's freaking out. He's freaking out at Ezra Levant. He's freaking out at Keean Bexty in this clip. But then it turns into a freak out of Ezra Levant. A little bit of history to go along with this. The commission has tried to limit Rebel News from being at the event. And Rebel News has successfully sued them twice in 2 election cycles, so that they will be able to join, because that's your right as a news organization. And they tried to limit people's rights, and they were told by a court, no, you can't do that. On top of that, Rebel News has had a lot of these issues. Ezra Levant had written a book called The Lebranos during the last election cycle, where he was ordered to take the book down because it was technically some sort of campaigning. And he was told if he wanted to do that, he would have to open up a third-party campaign thing and have it funded by other people. So he's done that. He's following the letter of the law with a bunch of people that are willing to scrutinize him for everything along the way, right? You don't have to like Ezra, but like, you do have to respect the fact that he is, even though people are trying to thwart him, following every rule.
Yeah, and if I could just follow up on that, it was Ezra Levant and Andrew Lawton in True North that sued twice, I believe. So it was both organizations. And I actually, several people, including myself, thanked Ezra. You know, obviously Andrew Lawton wasn't there, but they thanked him because they said, if it wasn't for you, none of us would be here. Regardless of how you feel about Ezra Levant, like, you know, you could say that it's Ezra Levant's fault that the whole thing got canceled. I personally don't think it is. We can get into that later. I have no idea what happened, nor do I really want to speculate. It's not really my place. But, you know, we wouldn't have even been there in the first place if it wasn't for him and True North. So I
don't know if I said this publicly, but I actually had a prediction that it would never happen. The second after the French one and the questions that you guys asked, it would not be allowed. They just would not allow that again.
So I speculated a similar thing, and I said they're going to switch the order that they come out from, because Mark Carney came out the first night. So literally, just if you were first in line, you got a question to Mark Carney. What ended up happening, I don't know if people probably don't know this, is they switched it so that Blanchette comes out first, Yves Francois Blanchette of the Bloc Québécois, then Jagmeet Singh, then Pierre Poilievre, then Carney. So in order to get a question to any of the relevant candidates, you had to do a math game at that point. So that was one thing. Another thing was when I got there, because we got so early, I actually overheard a staffer gesture to where the English line was. And he said, there will be a French line and there will be an English line. I don't know if he was just making I don't know if he made a mistake because he's not like an English speaker typically, but that could have indicated that they were planning on switching the lines as well. So if you happen to be in the wrong line, then, you know, you have to go all the way to the back of the line if you happen to try to be in the English line, right? So I had predicted that they would do some different things in order to stifle independent media, in order for us to not have that same opportunity. But honestly, I should have expected, but I didn't expect them to just cancel the debate scrum outright. Like that was wild to me. But yeah.
Right. Because I thought, well, they just wouldn't allow it. Yeah, I guess shenanigans would be the way to make sure it doesn't happen, and then say, well, your organization had a question the night before, so you can't come tonight, or something along those lines. It looks like it looks like they tried to just shut it down. And I mean, this is me saying that, but you know, let's go through the story and see how this all played out.
All right,
And,
Mr. Sunshine Baby, this is his first time seeing it, so I'm
Yeah.
excited. Yeah, get your reaction.
Let's see what happened.
I'm excited to catch your candid reaction on this one. So let's get into it. So this was the scene. First, this is the first bit that I saw. So I don't know if this is exactly where it started, but you guys had the questions the night before. This is on the evening of the English debate, and this is Cian Bexley as he's sitting in this room. Now there's a room for all the press, it looks like, and then there's a screen up at the front where you can watch the debate, and then the candidates will come out. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the candidates will come out, and then the reporters line up.
Yeah, to describe the setting, it's basically a big movie theater, and there's probably, how many rows would you say there is, Clayton? Like 10 rows back, and maybe 20 reporters per row?
Yeah, I heard it estimated like 200 reporters were there. I would say that that's probably
Wow.
accurate, but I could be like I honestly I should have done a better job accounting, but
Yeah, me too.
I didn't think the journalist was going to be the story, to be honest.
So the first
Yeah.
part of the footage here is from Cian Bexley's phone as the Hill Times reporter. His name is
Stuart Benson, I think is his name. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, this is Stuart Benson from the Hill Times. Yeah.
Ezra
Stuart
Levant
Benson.
nicknamed him Tantrum Boy, which
yeah, everybody's just calling him Tantrum Boy. So he was losing it over Cian, and it was over Cian's article about another candidate who used that term that's written on the screen that I can't say on this platform. But well, let's just play it out.
And things get homoerotic / because for plausible deniability. Also, the dudes are being kind of homophobic. That's one.
Do you have friends that
You
get pretty homophobic at times?
Yeah, most of my gay friends.
Most of your gay friends.
Do you know how much? You know how fast? What was it?
You say.
He said, yeah,
Is it fagotization?
yeah.
That's run through my gay friends like wildfire. They
Fagotization.
Love that. They love it.
They love fagotization.
They think it's the funniest word they've heard in a while.
So Ryan Turnbull.
Doing this voice doesn't actually
So
work.
Ryan Turn. No, I'm not. I'm curious. What do you just think that politicians should be off the hook for saying stuff like this?
What, 15 years ago? How long ago?
He was 30.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry,
So
who are you?
He wasn't a politician, so this is when he was.
He was a 30-year-old man
Okay.
who called gay men perverse.
Yeah, I think I've read through your story,
Yeah.
and I know you don't even believe that that's what he said.
Oh, I
Because know you're
100%
smarter
because
than
I
that, but
read
you're
it.
just-
I
you're-
read it that
Yeah,
that's what
no,
he
I read
said.
it too. And you're
Okay,
I just
so-
don't
so
think you're a
you-
very, I mean, you don't have any sort of morals or scruples. So
Okay.
you'll just throw it wherever you want. But I read it, and I know you're actually smarter than you pretend to be. So I know you know what he was.
So
doing.
he typed the words on Facebook,
Mhm.
perverse fagotization, referring to
so
gay
that's the
men.
only
No,
thing he wrote.
just calm down for a second, guys.
No, I know, but I want you to
So
be honest.
he said perverse fagotization, referring to homosexual men, and you think that that's an acceptable type of language for
Is that all
politicians to
he-
use?
Oh, well, he wasn't a
No,
politician.
that wasn't the only thing that he said.
yeah,
He
I
said
know.
a
I read
lot.
through what he said.
He said a lot of
Yeah, I read
extremely
through what he said.
homophobic stuff, and just because he's a liberal, you're trying to defend him. If this
No.
was a conservative,
Oh, so if it was a conservative, you would call for him to be removed, like Aaron
oh,
Gunn
absolutely. But
or
Aaron
Andrew
Gunn
Lawton?
hasn't said something like that. And if you could point to them doing that, please let me know.
The voice doesn't
It's
work.
crazy that you're getting so emotional about this, though. And how many of
Well,
your
honestly,
friends? How many of your friends drop F slurs just frequently?
I have respect for the industry and the profession.
Sure, you do. Yeah.
Your little chattering class.
Sure.
You
Sorry.
third-party advertisers that you
Who
work
are you?
for.
Who are you? Who do you work for?
Rebel News.
Who do you work for?
Rebel News, owned by Ezra Levant, is a different company.
Why are you screaming?
So they can stop spreading misinformation.
So.
Why are you screaming, by the way?
Well, I want to make sure the guys filming it over there get the good audio.
Good.
Can you hear me okay? Am I enunciating properly?
What the heck?
Do you have one set up?
Was
got
that
the
you,
levels ready
Alex?
for me?
Was that you saying, do you want to put a lavalier mic on? I think this is where your footage ties into this. So I'll switch over to your footage here. And this is the same scene. So Cian Bexley is across the room there with this Hill Times reporter. and this is your capturing of this this interaction.
You're arguing with Ryan Turnbull story, please.
He's clearly being like a loud disruption in the middle of this thing.
Yeah, everyone was dead quiet. Like it was like a library. Yeah.
Rebel News? Rebel News owned by Ezra Levant is a different company?
And this is where he learns that Kian Backseat is not indeed an employee of Ezra.
Which he hasn't been for a while.
Yeah.
Do you hear me okay?
I have a lavalier mic.
Enunciating properly?
Do you want to put a lavalier mic on and then I can hear you?
You have one set up? You got the levels ready for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're clearly not doing any actual journalism.
Really?
Why, when you guys started gaming the rules and threatening to sue because you didn't get your way, I assumed the rules were out the window.
No, it's right here on the website. You follow the rules.
Oh, was that like when it was in black and white saying you could only have one reporter credited so that everyone might have a chance to ask a question? But instead, you wanted to take, what was it, 2-minute long questions so that Polyev only got asked 3 questions. He usually allows 4 because things move a little bit quicker at his press conference. You guys are so verbose, I'll say. Most of us didn't get a question. And what I really don't enjoy is that everyone else here was being respectful, following the rules, just being considerate to everyone else. And what you guys decided to do was to take advantage, threaten to sue, so that you could try to get more than everyone else. And now, nobody likes you.
The CBC and the Radio Canada had 4 questions and we had 4 questions. Why are you lying? We had the same number as the CBC.
That's why they got the 4 questions, because the commission...
You're making that up. You're lying again.
When did the CBC get 4 questions?
Yesterday.
Yes, after they had already...
And they had the same in 2021, same in 2019. You're lying again.
I'm not.
It's your correspondent said...
Don't you have a third-party advertising truck to go take care of?
You're lying
again. How much have you spent on third-party advertising this election? Between Rebel News and For Canada, companies you own both of, how much money have you spent to influence this election? I'm assuming in favor of the Conservatives. How much have you spent? Like, you're a journalist,
Rebel
you must
News
be
has
honest.
spent 0.
So, Rebel News Limited, you set up...
You're a liar. This is... You haven't done your homework. You're making things up.
You can go to Elections Canada right now. Every third party is registered. Search Rebel News For Canada, and you will see clear as day Ezra Levant as the owner of both of those companies. He has third-party advertising trucks driving around this venue
You're lying
right
again.
now.
That's not a Rebel News ad on there. You're lying.
It's
Why are you
owned by
lying?
Rebel. It's owned by you. Oh, sorry. The truck is For Canada, which is owned by
you're
you,
lying again.
which is
Jesus
separate
Christ.
from Rebel News,
You're
which
a
is also
crazy
owned
guy.
by you.
You're crazy. You got to control your emotions.
One by one.
Control your emotions.
So, Ed, I'm not just enunciating.
You're out of control. You're out of
Speaking
control.
quietly doesn't make your things any less
You're
bullshit.
completely out of control emotionally. And your facts are completely wrong.
All right,
You're an
let's
embarrassment. What's your name? What's your name? You're suddenly shy.
No, I'm Googling.
You're Googling your name?
Why
don't you tell us who you are, tough guy?
Stuart Benson, Hill Times.
Student Benson, well, you're a disgrace to the Hill Times. And your facts are wrong.
Well, actually, here's the thing. I can do the job of one of me can do the same job you do.
Okay, you can kind of see the size of the room there.
So am I the disgrace, or is it all of the people you needed to do the job I do by myself?
You just got to control your emotions. You're just out of control.
Rebel News Network Limited, March 27th, registered with Elections Canada, name of applicant, Ezra Levant, mailing address, Edmonton, Alberta, T5J-OK4. I wonder where that would have been.
Is that journalism? You Googling things?
I wonder what that postal code.
Well, you certainly got it.
And let's go check out more Canada. What they are. Am I talking too loud now, or should?
No, you just,
I don't know about
you don't understand, you don't even understand what you're looking at.
What work are you doing? With nothing in front of you. Oh! Oh! Yes! Yes! The really exceptional work you're doing.
Okay, now they're coming in
Telling you you're
to
out of
snap
control
photographs.
emotionally.
So what happens from here? Like,
what
where does
happens
it
from
go
here?
from here?
So that woman who just came up and spoke to him just briefly there, like maybe 3
Yeah.
seconds ago on the clip, she was a very
Mhm.
nice woman. I don't know what her job is. I don't know what her name is, but she works for I believe, the debate commission. She was the person who would give you your lanyard for your accreditation when you walked in through security the first time. Again, I don't know who she is, but she was pleasant enough. What she did is she went up to him. I don't know what she said. I imagine she said, like, be an adult or, keep your voice down. Ezra, on the other hand, was removed from the room.
So
Ezra was removed.
Well, she goes up to Ezra and says, "Can I speak with you, privately?" And Ezra goes, "Yeah, of course, absolutely." And he leaves the room with her. I later interviewed him, and then he also you might have a clip of this, but there's a moment where he comes back into the room, and like literally every journalist, and I want to correct myself, maybe I would say 100 journalists from looking at the room. But anyway, every journalist in the room is hovering around him, and the debate is just about to start. But what he spoke about was, according to Ezra, is that the CBC was requesting that he be taken out of the room. Him and his journalists be removed from the debate commission. He refused to leave, saying he has just as much of a right to be there as every other journalist. But yeah, so that's essentially what we missed. It looked like a lot of people
I've
were
got the clip.
speculating. Yeah, okay.
I'll pop the clip up here. So I guess this is what happened immediately after.
Yeah.
What's the common ground? Well, I'm kidding around. We don't have common ground. I don't know what is. Yesterday, I think the independent journalists were a little bit too independent, and the regime journalists are too friendly with the regime. And I've seen a full court press by regime journalists over the last 24 hours to bring in limits to what independent journalists can do.
You mean third-party advertisers, Ezra? Can you talk about the $180,000 you're spending to do advertising, voter contact, both through For Canada and into Rebel News Network Limited?
See, you're wrong on that, and that's what concerns me, is that For Canada is a different group that was registered.
You paid $170,000 to Rebel News Network Limited. Is that not true?
You're getting your facts wrong, Justin, and I want to make sure you're careful.
What did the commissioner say to you? Yes.
We were actually talking about the CBC, who want us out of here. The CBC want us kicked out. We're not leaving. The CBC were outraged that Mr. Cormier let us in. The CBC had 4 questions yesterday. Rebel News had 4 questions yesterday. The CBC thinks that's normal, and it's abnormal that we do it.
So was he talking to you about your accreditation, asking questions, or was it about the incident in here right now, just earlier?
It was about neither. It was actually about, what's his name, the bald guy on the CBC?
David Cochrane.
Yeah, I mean, Cochrane wanted me kicked out.
That's what I call him too.
Cochrane's really thin-skinned. I talked to Rosemary Barton too. I invited her to a challenge, and she declined, but that had nothing to do with it. Anyways, I want to get back to the journalism here, but it's a pleasure to be in the center of the attention. I want to give a shout out to my fellow independent journalist, Cian Bexley, proud alumnus of Rebel News. Ailey is not associated with us, but I admire his independence. And I would like to encourage everyone who's watching. You can be a journalist. If you've got a phone, you're a journalist. If you've got a Facebook page, you're a journalist. Yes, it is, Judy. In fact,
but do independent journalists hire trucks and fundraise off of things like that?
I don't know. You're a government journalist. Every single one of you.
No,
takes-
no. We're not government journalists.
If you get the government subsidy, you're a government journalist.
I'm not a government journalist.
Who do you work for, sir?
I work for the Canadian Press. I'm not.
Canadian Press gets massive grants from the government.
No, we don't.
Someone
get,
wearing a
it's-
liberal-
It's administrative and funding.
I mean, you're literally wearing a liberal lanyard.
Because I follow
Who are you with? You Canada, you're owned by the government.
Okay, you like to play the
Ezra,
game
what do
now.
you
You're
think
just
about the
making it a big
Ezra, what do you
deal.
think about the third-party advertisers that are supporting the CBC right now?
No, go ahead. No, come back. Come back. Don't run away.
Don't run away.
I actually didn't hear the question. I'm flattered to be here. Let me just say this. I think that journalism needs to be democratized. And I think it's sort of creepy that the enemies of Rebel News in the press gallery stop us from asking questions of politicians 99% of the time. Once every 4 years, we're allowed to put a couple of questions to these high priests of politics, and there's a total freak out in the press gallery. Like seriously, it's like leap year. 15 minutes every 4-year season, we're allowed.
He's taking any Michel Courtney. What did he tell you? And there was a
We were
woman
talking-
at one point.
So that's that clip. Jasper, what's your take on this so far? You've been pretty quiet so far. What's your take?
So I remember when I made a video about it, I hadn't seen any of this. And I roughly remember saying it's probably a massive overreaction by our media and by our government and by the elections group that was moderating this entire thing. And there's probably a little bit of antagonizing that was done by Ezra, which all things considered, maybe he could have brought that down and maybe that would have brought, everything down so it wouldn't have escalated. But after seeing it, I mean, I thought Elbows Up was the gayest thing I'd seen. This might top it. Like, that was just the stupidest thing. That guy should, I don't know what the repercussions should be, but from the Hill Times, like, there was nothing wrong with Keenan Bext or what Ezra did from the independent side. Like that, there's a time and place to start questioning your peers or competitors, but doing it in a public space like that, when you're literally waiting, I'm assuming that's like backstage. I'm not fully understanding the layout of everything, but backstage somewhere waiting to ask questions and starting this fight like that, it's a massive waste of time. It's extremely unprofessional of that dude to have done that. And then for everyone to surround Ezra like that, it's just comedic. It's comedic for him to be the center of attention afterwards. They're there literally trying to do a post debate in the election scrum, and then Ezra, you got cameras, he's like paparazzi. It was like Connor McDavid scoring the game winner on game 7 or something. Like, it made no sense. Everything about that was backwards. And then if I'm not mistaken, they're isolating the entire, like, they're canceling the entire scrum because of that. Like, that doesn't, my brain doesn't comprehend what the hell we just saw and how that correlates to something being canceled.
This takes us to the clip that I sent you earlier, Clyde, which is the CBC is going to explain not only was the scrum canceled, but they brought in, I would say, at least 30 police officers. At least, would that be a fair estimation, Clayton? You were inside, I was outside, so I don't know if the
the inside there wasn't a lot of police, but when you leave, like the whole, like, the CBC had these tents. I think Alex called them. What did you say? The power and politics refugee camps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but like the police were guarding the CBC as if they, like, Rebel News posed an actual, like, security threat to them. But yeah, I mean, like, go ahead.
It was a giant row of police officers protecting what I called, the Rosemary Barton refugee tent. And then, and behind that tent, there was actually a portable bathroom. So this, like, added to the strangeness of it all, because we're in this big movie theater. Just outside the movie theater is the tents. But if you want to use the bathroom, and this is a long event, you're there for like 7 hours. So, and also, I just want to say, this is not a joke. I swear something was wrong with the coffee in that place. I drink a lot of coffee. I had 1 cup and my hands were shaking. So I think somebody brewed it a little strong. I don't know if that's what happened here.
Maybe it was one of the Randys. Maybe strong Eagle coffee.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Randy Boissonneau brewed the coffee. So it was a little strong. But on the way, you like, if so after 7 hours, you might go to the bathroom once or twice. You're walking past the CBC tent. And it's strange because if you're like, I got to ask a question and they were talking smack about me on their show, and now I'm just walking right past them on the way to the bathroom. And so I believe, and this has come to light just recently, that Ezra Levant had said to David Cochran something like, you've been talking smack about me and about my journalists. Like, if you want to ask me a question, I'm right here. That had happened earlier in the day. But CBC said that was not the reason that the police were called, to correct you, Jasper. So your assumption about
there's another clip.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. So there's another clip, and this is a clip that was put together by Lincoln J, I think, who I believe he is with Rebel News. He's one of their crew.
He's like their videographer or one of them. Yeah.
There you go. So I'll put this up, and this is him explaining the course of a few different things, and he edits it together to try to make it chronological while explaining it. So here's his account of what occurred afterwards, or leading up to an actual altercation.
All right, let's break down what exactly led up to this moment of Terry Gillen, lead media advance for Prime Minister Mark Carney, smacking David Menzies twice outside of the leaders' debate last night. Now, as many of you know, the post-debate media scrum was canceled, and a journalist from Ricochet Media started to yell and blame Rebel News for it being canceled. While I was filming this interaction, I noticed another cameraman filming me while all the action was happening behind him. So to test if he was actually filming me, I moved around, and unsurprisingly, his camera followed me. Fast forward to a few minutes later, and I tried to get a shot of his name tag to see who he worked for, and he elbowed me out of the way. As he was exiting the venue, my colleague Alexa Lavoie attempted to speak with him in French to see who he worked for because he wouldn't respond in English to me. David Menzies also followed us outside of the building, and as I was attempting to get a shot of his name tag on his bag, he smacked my phone out of my hand and stepped on it. And then, out of nowhere, Terry Gillen steps into the picture, and as David Menzies is filming him, he did not like that the camera was in his face, and he smacked it out of David's hand. David retrieved his camera and attempted to ask him what that was all about, and he smacked it again. It's important to note that there was police all around while this was happening, and I was in disbelief that none of them were stepping in at this moment. It's also important to note that the cameraman who initiated the whole incident then went on to load up all of his camera equipment onto an official Liberal Party bus. Now, let's compare that with CTV News's coverage of the interaction that occurred.
I think we have the tape for you right now because the Liberal bus was on René Lévesque Boulevard, which is just the street behind the camera here. And so as they were going out, they were being followed by some of those, as I mentioned, I called them earlier, some of those so-called journalists from Rebel News. And as they were walking out towards security, they were being hounded by them, being filmed by them. And these are just journalists who are trying to get back to the hotel tonight as there are no more scrums. And at that moment, you'd seen this clash between one of the members of Rebel News, and it seems like somebody from the Liberal Party. It continued to spill out.
So that's that.
So is that the reason it got canceled?
Well,
That was
no, this is
afterwards.
after.
Clyde,
This is after it happened.
That's after it was canceled. So, Clyde, if you pull up that clip I sent to you earlier, this is the CBC's explanation. And I believe that they acknowledge in this explanation, which they did on air, that it was their decision to call the police. And they make a claim in this video that I just do not understand. They're claiming, well, let's just watch it and maybe you guys can help demystify it for me. I'm not sure what's going on here.
The bald guy from CBC.
There you go. That's him.
There are, just so people understand, there are a series of police officers stationed behind us to make sure that we remain safe and that the media get out safely. There were not altercations between journalists inside the media room, and there was no altercation between journalists that happened on David's set. These were right-wing people that publish their own agenda and websites who confronted journalists inside the media center, who confronted David on his set, who directly and personally confronted me inside the media center. These are people that the commission decided to accredit and and that is where we are now. The situation deteriorated quickly in terms of how those people were behaving inside a professional media center where you were supposed to be doing your job. And that has left us with no scrums and a strange security situation on a night where we should be focused on the things that you want to ask us.
It certainly didn't look like this
just
last
one
night.
point on that. We are inside a secure perimeter. You have to go through screening processes that involve the RCMP. This set we are on, they came in with bomb sniffing dogs, searched our bags to make sure everything was safe.
Why even mention
That's to make
that?
sure
That
the
just
leaders are
seems
safe and
absurd to
everybody
say
in here is
that.
safe. And for whatever reason, the way this evolves throughout the day and yesterday, the Montreal police are here putting up caution tape, escorting people out. And the leaders of Canada's 4 parties who were able to participate in this debate, because they, what was the phrase? Didn't feel they could provide or guarantee a proper environment. They're not going to take questions from journalists. And look, I know not everybody thinks it's all about us, but it is an important part of the ritual of elections and democracies and accountability. And it is part of the stress test that these leaders go through as they seek to lead this country, you know, and spend your tax revenue and make laws, and some serious things being discussed here tonight about criminal justice and using the notwithstanding clause. These are all things that require
What's
a serious and
important
mature
about
debate.
this clip,
Not
why I wanted to watch it is you'll notice that they make 2 claims. They say this is not due to an altercation that occurred between journalists and the media center. So they dispel the idea that this had anything to do with Stuart Benson. They say this did not have to do with anybody approaching us in David's tent, which dispels the notion that Ezra confronting him in the tent was the issue. They said, they make a very specific claim. They say people, which is plural, who are right-wing media accredited journalists. I can tell you every right-wing media accredited journalist that was there, why don't they name them? In order to get accredited, you have to, as they mentioned, it's a very secure perimeter. You have to give your first and last name. You have to give a passport style picture. They do background checks. Why don't they name the person that did this? Because I can tell you exactly who is the right-wing accredited media. It was like, wouldn't even call myself right-wing, or you, Clayton, but that's whatever. That's what they call us. So it was Clayton, myself, Ezra Levant, Drea Humphrey, Alexa Lavoie, Jen Hodgson from the Western Standard, Lincoln Jay, David Menzies, Sheila Gunn Reid, and there's Kian Bexty, of course. There was 10 of us out of 100. So which one of us was it?
Well, yeah, there was other independent media there. Also, I noticed he said that they were escorting people out. They weren't like that clip we just saw was Rebel trying to get footage and hold accountable the cameraman they allege was had attacked Lincoln, or shouldered him, whatever. You could disagree with their tactics in that, but the reality is no one was actually escorted out. They were leaving, and then since they left, I think at that point they weren't allowed back in.
So I was sort of escort. I may have been escorted out. I don't know, because in my video, which I published, where I'm filming the police, there's a CBC guy standing next to me, and he's talking to me in French. And he could be telling me to leave. I don't comprehend French very well. He could be asking me what I'm having for dinner tonight. I really don't know. But I mean, he basically said, have a good night, took me out. And then there was the confrontation in front of the Liberal bus. I was there for that. They would not let us go back in. And they also claimed that we were waiting for the CBC people to come out, like we were going to attack them. That's absolutely not what happened. A lot of people's stuff were still in there. David Menzies' car keys were still in there. Alexa Lavoie's jacket. So we were just waiting and asking them, when can we get our stuff? I was messaging Clayton, who was still inside, saying, can you get people's stuff, a certain person's pen or whatever. It was just chaos.
I do want to look at that point where he talks about the dogs coming through and searching all of our stuff. So it's obviously no one was deemed to be a security risk, right? And then before they officially canceled the thing, I believe the CBC was reporting that there was the scrums were going to be canceled due to security reasons or security concerns. So they just tried to make it seem as though Rebel News in particular, but independent media in general, were somehow causing such a big scene that it posed a security risk. And that's the implication of what David Cochran was saying. yeah, like and all the footage you see from the legacy media is essentially like they'll not mention that, you know, it was Stuart Benson who started this outburst, or right after the scrums it was Ethan Cox from the Ricochet causing another outburst. It's always labeled as a rebel news conflict or a you know, and it just, as someone who was there, it feels dirty that they're completely stripping the context of what actually happened. And I'm not saying there isn't criticisms that people can levy at Rebel News, but to make it seem as though this was like they were somehow causing this thing to get clicks is crazy. They didn't start it unless somehow Stuart Benson is on the payroll of Rebel News, which is obviously absurd. But you know what I mean? Like there's no, like they start, you know, other people started it. Everyone else was just trying to get questions in. No one wanted this to happen. They would rather have just gotten questions in like they did the last night. You know?
And in hindsight, like I kind of wish that we just didn't respond at all. You know, all I said is, do you want a lavalier mic? And I said to that Ethan Cox fella, because he was saying, this is outrageous that you guys had all the questions yesterday. And I said, well, you were too slow, you know, but like in hindsight, I wish that I hadn't responded at all. But try that. Like when you're in a workplace environment and somebody is harassing you, they're berating you, they're yelling at you. It's not the job of the person being harassed to remain silent. Right. It's the job of the person doing the harassing to not harass in the first place. And in that sense, I think that the debate commission failed in its commitment and obligation to have a workplace that was free of toxicity and
100%.
harassment. Like I'm not a victim or anything. I'm a big boy. Like I have thick skin. I don't feel like I was traumatized by the incident or anything, but I worked in office environments for years and years and years, and I've never seen anything like that before in my life. It's just completely unacceptable behavior, and he should have been removed, in my opinion.
Well, and it turned into like a gang kind of behavior, right? Like it started with one guy with his altercation with Kean Bexty, who he thought worked for Rebel News. I mean, he's like, what journalism are we getting from the Hill Times, where he's confronting a guy who, I mean, if he knows so much about him, he should know that he's had the counter signal for a number of years and has left Rebel News and has been doing his own independent thing. So. It started with him, but then it turned into like this gang mentality where it's like us guys versus yous guys, and that's craziness. I
was
absurd.
talking to Robert Krychek, who's a great journalist, and he's worked for Breitbart and Rebel News. We were kind of speculating on why this all happened, and we were saying like that. I don't know how old that Stuart Benson fella is, but he looks pretty young. And a lot of these folks, like if they went to journalism school at 20, and now let's say he's 25. That means for 5 years, you know, he was probably locked up during COVID, and a lot of journalists work remotely. So I'm wondering if a lot of these people, I'm not trying to like make this like a generational rude thing like Gen Zs or antisocial, but a lot of these journalists, you know, they work from home and they're just not around other people very often. So they're just not properly socialized. I'm not trying to be, I know that like it's
absolute nerds.
Like, I'm not trying to like kick him while he's down, but like something is clearly wrong there, and because that is just not appropriate behavior. Like if you did that at a trades job, you know, you'd be out the door, right? And if you did that in an environment, you'd be in the HR. This is just not acceptable.
I think it's a power shift too. Like YouTube is the largest streaming platform in the entire world, and you're seeing these people put out so much money and only get so much back in return, when you can be a YouTuber with a webcam, with a phone, with a microphone or the built-in mic, and you can reach audiences of hundreds of thousands, millions of people for the cost of essentially nothing, right? And I think it's that power shift. Now, if YouTubers and social media personnel, influencers, whatever you want to call them, independent journalists, were really not a threat, then why is it that the mainstream media keeps mentioning it, right? Why do they keep using their name for the headlines, right? Rebel News or right-wing media outlets. If it really wasn't a threat, why even mention that at all? Because they're trying to bring traffic in, right? A few years ago, Clyde, I feel like it was mostly you and I on the YouTube scene. And now in this niche, in this space, right? That had maybe over 100K or whatever. And now there's like a lot
tons of
people,
voices.
Tons.
Great.
And if you accumulate everyone's monthly views, and with X and other platforms, you're getting hundreds of millions of views, which is a direct competition to the mainstream media. So Rosemary Barlow, who the hell is she going to be in 3 years? The bald guy from CBC is going to forever be remembered as the bald guy from what? From CBD? I never heard of it, right? These people are on their way out, and they're throwing these little tantrums, trying to stir the pot to hold on to any form of relevancy. And it's really not working. And as long as everyone who's in the independent scene, all the creators can still remain peaceful, right? We keep using that word. We have to. Peaceful protesting, peaceful, journalism, all that stuff for a few more years. I don't know what the number is, 2 more years, 4 or 5 more years. I feel like the mainstream media is either going to have to submit and start integrating us similar people into their platforms and actually respect it, or there's literally going to be just a dropout of these mainstream media platforms and a rise of independent creators and independent journalists.
Yeah, I didn't know this, but historically, this is actually not new. So originally, when it was newspaper journalism, they were really resentful of the radio people. And then when the television people came along, the radio people were resentful of them. And now we're just on the next stage, right? Where the television people are resentful of the YouTubers and the independent media. So
this actually originates, believe it or not, back to the Wall Street Journal and PewDiePie. For people who don't know who that is, PewDiePie is like this game streamer, video game content creator, and he's like, I don't know if he still is, but it was the largest YouTuber on the platform, most grossing content creator. And the Wall Street Journal was completely jealous of this fact, some article. And what did they do? They found his clips, and they found clips that were like unsavory jokes and took them out of context. And they were completely out of context because I mean, his stuff is pretty benign, but they take it out of context. And then what they did was they found the video with the out of context clip, and they refreshed it until there was a Coca-Cola ad on it. And then they published a article saying, look at this awful stuff that YouTube is publishing, and juxtaposed it to these major brands. And it caused the first, like what they call the adpocalypse. And it was the first time that this new media really got taken on by the old media in a meaningful way, where they're like, we're going to take away your ability to make a living. And it really is like you're describing. It's just that they're dinosaur media. It's an old version, and they're losing demographics at the end of the day.
I don't know what they were expecting either. Like, did they just did they feel that they were entitled to just go to the front of the line without getting out of their chair?
That's what I'm guessing.
Like, why were they mad at us? Like, again, hate the game and not the player. Is the system not perfect? Of course it's not. I mean, I imagine like the media scrum could have turned into a hockey brawl if they had one on the English night, with everybody trying to get to the line first. So like, but what I also said is like, we could have done this remotely. They could do a lottery where people put their names in and they randomly get picked. There's all kinds of different ways that you could do this that are better.
I would have said you have one question and treat it like Twitter. You have 260 characters and limit it to that. So you can't have this long-winded question that will take up all the other journalists' time. I mean, that's a fair thing to set in motion. I mean, obviously that wasn't the case, but I think that would be a good idea.
Well, another thing I just wanted to mention too, I really wish that I got footage of this, but I was in the process of leaving the room at that point out of principle because Jagmeet Singh was speaking. But when Drea Humphrey was up there asking her question, they were heckling her incessantly. I could just hear person after person going, go faster, finish your question. Again, incredibly unprofessional behavior. She was also one of the only people of color in the room as well. One thing I found really fascinating, and I know that this probably isn't relevant, so forgive me, is Montreal is one of the most diverse places on earth. And then you walk into that media center and it was 95% white. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know why I noticed that or why I'm talking about it, but it just seems like, well, it's funny to me because this is the legacy media and they're always talking about DEI, woke initiatives, the importance of diversity, but they clearly don't practice what they preach. We're all white.
Enough.
I'm from Vancouver. I'm from Surrey. Like, I didn't see a single turban in the room, which is unusual for me. Like, that would be very unusual in Vancouver and in Montreal for that matter, right? It was just incredibly not diverse. I thought that was interesting and worth mentioning.
I think the solution in the meantime to combating all this hate and divisiveness that the mainstream media is doing is for independent people to just monetize it, just record it and make content on your platform, and then try to reach out to other creators and journalists that can share it. Because I remember when I went to Victoria to the legislator, and they mentioned something that was defamatory or whatever about me that I said. I don't know, who knows. I immediately went outside, did a live stream, and I think got like 100,000 views. And I just talked about how I was mentioned in the legislator. Like that's insane numbers. The media can't do that on a whim. They need to issue payroll and send people travel vouchers and put people up in hotels to go get a story, whereas we could just grab our phone and, you know, text something or do a video. And I think just consistently doing that over and over and over again, it's slowly chipping away at their power and giving us kind of that ability, that power right now, that shared power between all independent media and creators and stuff like that.
And that's because nobody trusts the mainstream media, the legacy media, or the cartel media, as Trish Wood likes to call them anymore. And this weird CBC Jussie Smollett style hoax, where like apparently Rosie Barton was attacked in the media center. I didn't see Rosie Barton once in the media center.
So is that was something that was said, that she was attacked?
That's what she claims. She claims somebody from
she was in the food line or something.
Right-wing accredited media. Again, we were all named. We all had lanyards. There's no reason. Also, if Rosie Barton was assaulted, why were there 30 police officers there? Is that standard operating procedure for the Montreal police? If they get an assault call, that they send 30 officers to line the entire street? I mean, this was just surreal. It was just a surreal.
How are there no witnesses? Like nobody knows who it is.
There's no footage of it. It was just a hilarious event. I can't believe it happened.
So one thing
you're talking about reporters as well. There's like everyone has a cameraman around,
and everybody's just waiting to film something juicy.
One thing I tried to bring up to Alex there, but he apparently doesn't get movie references, is I mentioned that it was like Mean Girls. The journalists were like the movie Mean Girls, you know, like just bullying, you know, like the people they didn't view to be journalists. But really, like the system, it was like sorry to make another movie reference, but like The Matrix. It was like Agent Smith trying to like, you know, get rid of the threat to the Matrix that was the independent media. So like even the first night, and I think I hope we didn't talk about it already, but we were talking before the show, was that they changed. We kind of expected that they wouldn't let us do what happened in the first night from us just being there and keen. What they ended up doing was they swapped and I believe this was intentional, but you know, I guess it's speculation, but they switched the order at which the leaders were coming out. So being first in line wouldn't matter because you're getting, you know, Yves Francois Blanchette and Jagmeet Singh, who, you know, are, let's face it, not the most relevant candidates there. They could have also swapped the English and French line. So they were doing, before this idea that they were going to cancel it. And Michel Cormier, sorry if I'm saying his name wrong, but the debate commissioner was on the CBC saying, yeah, we're going to change some rules to make it hard. He said that there's only so much we can do to you know, control free speech when he was asked by David Cochrane to kick us out. You know, they were working hard like white blood cells trying to get rid of, you know, us who they thought were invading their space. But, you know, we were there the whole day. I was sitting there like going over my questions, writing things. And another thing that Stuart Benson said about Kian when he goes, oh, you have nothing in front of you, you're not working. Well, you know what? Our work was simply to ask a question. So Kian likely had his questions on his phone. He had worked very hard, just like everyone else, to get those questions worked out. And, you know, we do have a team back, not in the space. So it was just, you know, the point is we were there to do work, and we worked really hard to do it. And you know, they just didn't like what we had to say.
So it looks like the what's his name? Michael Cormier. Was he the commissioner of the debate?
Cormier, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I always pronounce French names wrong. Just forgive me for that. So it looks like he had no intention of letting this stuff fly. And when I say this stuff, I mean independent journalists being able to ask questions or being part of this scrum or being part of any of this stuff. Vesper put this tweet out saying breaking. Sorry, not Michael Cormier. It's Michel Cormier. Admits on Radio Canada a day before the English debate that he opposed Rebels' right to ask questions at the debates, but after losing twice in court, this is in 2019 and 2021's elections, they were forced to accredit them per the court ruling. So instead of another legal battle, Cormier admitted on the air that they would surely lose, that they just canceled the debates under the guise of a threat. Am I understanding this clearly? Is there a legal case here? So here's the clip. It's dubbed in English.
With us to explain and also to defend himself, Michel Cormier, the General Director of the Leaders Debates Commission. Mr. Cormier, hello. So how come there were 5 journalists there? I'm using quotation marks who represented this media last night.
But because we lost 2 cases in court in 2019 and 2021, because it's important to know that we had tried to prevent rebel news from participating in these press conferences. Because I agree with Chantal that they are not journalists as we understand it, but we lost those 2 cases. And for months, we've been communicating through our lawyers with rebel and their lawyers to try to limit the number of journalists. So rather than risk another trial that we would surely lose, because with the previous 2, it would have been impossible to win this one. We did. We gave them 5 passes for the press conferences. There are still many journalists. The other media also have passes that can be exchanged. A journalist from an organization can ask a question, leave the line, hand his badge to a journalist, his colleague from the same organization. So the same thing happened in 2021.
That's a lie.
Except it was more over the phone because of COVID. But at that time,
That
the
never
court
happened
told
once.
us you must accredit 11 journalists from Rebel. So those are court orders. It's hard not to obey them. So that causes what we saw yesterday. We'll see today if there's a way to try to better manage traffic for tonight for the English debate.
What does that
What do
mean?
they mean, better manage traffic?
No,
What
but
does
to
that
see if
mean?
we can, I don't know. We will explore options with the producer then.
Okay, but the 5 there, what's it based on?
It's based on the fact that
You say last time we were forced to have 11. Now we allowed 5 journalists to attend based on what?
Well, based on if, for example, we had said we did the evaluation and thought that 5 was still half of 11, then that would probably work. Otherwise, we didn't want to end up in court with another judgment forcing us to accredit even more. Is that it?
And if I can comment on this too, like just because I'm an empathetic person, and as Clayton was saying, our job was to get a question in. So I get why Stuart Benson and Ethan Cox and all of the people who didn't get a question and Clayton feel disappointed, right? Like that was your job. And Clayton, I mean, it's not your fault, right? I mean, the scrum was canceled. So, it's not like you weren't fast enough. But the other guys, they were just mad that they weren't fast enough. They got outfoxed, and it's really just that simple. Like
there's something that he said there where he said that you could just pass you can get your accreditation and just pass it behind you to the journalist before you or behind you. I mean, I guess technically you can do that, but that wasn't the rules. Like he's making it sound like that's like a very easy thing to do. Like they would just go, oh, you can't just hand it actually was non-transferable. So it's not like Alex could ask a question on the French night and then just hand it to me and then I get to ask a question. That wasn't how it operated.
Yeah,
so I don't know why he said that.
To clarify as well on why he said they had 5. So as I understand it, and I wasn't privy to the litigation or anything, so don't take this as gospel or anything, but basically they had said every organization is allowed to get 1 question per debate. So for instance, True North, Clayton and I were there. I took the French one, he took the English one. But CBC, they said, is allowed 12, I think, for each of the regions, because there's CBC Vancouver, CBC Calgary, CBC Toronto. So as I understand it, Rebel challenged that and said, well, we have 5 journalists across the country. We would like 5 passes as well, which I think is perfectly reasonable. I mean, that's fair. Why should CBC get, 11? And everybody else get one.
Yeah, there's a reason why they folded under the pressure of the lawsuit. Like they knew, like it wasn't just like this is ridiculous. It's like, oh yeah, like they have a point here that like just take your 5 journalists, right? So
and also
anyway.
when we were talking about the magic trick of just showing up early, like we didn't tell, like as friendly as we were with the rebel folks, we didn't tell the rebel people like what we were doing, Kean and I. They just, because they were our buddies and they kind of clued in and figured it out. I guess they're also smarter than everybody else.
Well, yeah, they've been to these things before.
They just walked up behind us.
Yeah,
and they were our
been to
buddies,
these
so they
things
felt comfortable
before.
doing it.
And they knew, like, it just, everyone, as soon as they started seeing the line was forming, like every other journalist started going. There wasn't some conspiracy. It was just like, oh yeah, if we don't get in line right now, we will not get a question in. So it's as simple as that, right? Like
the real irony of this whole thing is you've got this one squeaky reporter at the event who's crying about how, you know, you guys have gamed the system, you figured it out and figured out a way to do this. Meanwhile, they're legitimately, like, the commission is gaming the system to make sure that you're not part of it. And
yeah,
like that's crazy. That's crazy that they're gaming the system to make sure certain groups are not allowed. People with a particular viewpoint or a vantage point are not allowed to be a part of this, and they have to sue to get in there, and they have to chomp at the bit, work really hard to get to the front of the line. I don't know, work hard by like getting up out of your chair, and then it's a freak out. It's a freak out when you guys get to ask a question.
And I heard Candace Malcolm say, and I agree with this, there were a lot of left-wing independent media organizations that were allowed to be there because of our lawsuit as well. I shouldn't say our lawsuit because I wasn't working for True North at the time of the lawsuit. So right. There was, for instance, a really nice girl. She was, I think she was the managing editor for the largest Anglophone newspaper in Quebec. You know, there was people, just all kinds of different left-wing organizations there, and everybody was really friendly, I thought. Clayton kept telling me that I was being too nice. He kept saying, like, they're not your friends, Alex. And, you know, I realized how true that was on the second day when we were getting let out by the police. But
it was just den of vipers here. But
everybody
there was that girl. Sorry to cut you off. There was that girl there who was from I think the Converse, and she was asking Jagmeet Singh a question, and you can it's a very interesting moment where Jagmeet Singh is refusing to answer the question from her because he doesn't recognize the outlet, and then he goes, I guess some other journalist, he says, oh, a journalist that I trust is telling me that they're good, meaning they're not, they're left wing essentially. But there was like
ideologically pure.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, yeah, checks out. And so I'll allow you to, but that just goes back to the point at the beginning where it's like journalists are asking questions. It doesn't matter if you don't like the person asking the question or you don't like the outlet. They're asking questions on behalf of other Canadians. So it's like, if it's a valid question, like I get it if the question's slanted and you don't want to answer it or something like that. But when it's a valid question, it shouldn't matter who's asking it. You should just answer it as an elected official. Not to give my opinion too much, but I feel like they're due. Like Canadians are due that answer.
Well, it's pressure testing the next prime minister of the country. If you can't handle questions by mainstream media or independent media, how the hell are you going to handle China or Russia or America or other countries around the world? How are we supposed to have confidence in you as a leader to represent us here in this country to our people, but then to the freaking world stage? And you're talking about you want to be the biggest economy in the G7. Like that's what most candidates are saying, a powerhouse economy, right? Either competing with America or the best economy in the G7, whatever the liberals say. But you get freaked out at these little independent media questions and you belittle it. It's insane. And then also, this was the last time that all of those party leaders share the same stage until at the end of May when they resume Parliament, when they go back to question period. And we haven't had all of them share the stage since like start of December. And there's been one person that's swapped out, right? It's the same person. So it's absolutely absurd for them to have canceled it. I mean, even if they just removed the people that were in the altercation and then continued with the scrum, that would have at least been a better temporary solution than just canceling the entire scrum. It's super disappointing, and it undermines our democracy. And then to try to come up with a narrative that it was, because of some security issues, because of specifically right-wing media people, like, go screw yourself, man. Who cares about that? There was no threat. So answer the questions, do your job. There was no threat. So just even if there was a threat, okay, get rid of the threat and then continue.
Like,
or
I'm just
do the
curious,
scrum some other time.
I'm curious how that phone call from the CBC to the Montreal police went, where we have some right-wing media journalists here who we're afraid of. You said please send 30 police officers to intimidate them.
Can you show me on the doll where he asked the question?
Right, like, yeah, it was really absurd and kind of hilarious, frankly. I am really sad for the public, though, to your point, Jasper, that like and for journalists like Clayton, who didn't get an opportunity to ask their question. And I'll stop short of apologizing, because I don't think there's anything I could have done to do anything differently, other than
I consume too much politics, like more than what's a healthy dose. Multiply that by 5. Like, I watch this too much. I watch Question Period too much. I watch too much news. I'm too invested. I'm too invested in politics, more than what's probably healthy. I think most of our country is right now. I just went and voted for the first time federally in my entire life, 31 years old. And I'm like, wow. I even had to walk a kilometer somewhere to do it, uphill both ways in a snowstorm, whatever. But I still did it, right? And I'm like proud that I voted. And there's a lot of people right now that are on the fence, especially with the election being this tight, right? Like, it's a pretty close election. And a lot of people are making their mind up with these questions. I indirectly know several people, half a dozen to a dozen people, that were thinking of voting for Carney, or they support the NDP either provincially, right? And they were maybe not federally, but they were going to vote not conservative. And after the debate, 6 to 12 people easily, indirectly, not people that I've spoken to, but friends of friends and family and stuff like that, that said they've already gone and voted for conservative. Like, that's incredible. And it's not just, I'm not just happy because they're voting conservative. I'm just happy that they're voting, period. And if the election is this tight, if the difference is a few questions, which it could be, then why would they pride themselves, the election commission, on just completely getting rid of the scrum?
Well, and it sounds like the reason people were upset in the room was because not enough people were allowed to ask questions. Well, there's a very easy and simple solution to that. Allow more questions.
Yeah.
There you go. They couldn't figure this out. They couldn't figure this out on the go. They didn't have a contingency plan. What the hell are we paying for?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the hard questions are more damaging than softball questions are rewarding for particular characters. If you really wanted somebody to win the election and you wanted them to not be damaged, like if the media is really behind Carney, the best thing that they could do is avoid at all costs any hard-hitting questions that the public might see.
They've asked hard questions to Pierre. They've slandered Pierre. Well, where's his security clearance? And now we know Tom Mulcair came out and said it's made up by Trudeau to hurt Pierre. So we know that the Liberal Party's been lying. The media's been lying, literally lying, like just not bending the truth, not misleading, like factually freaking lying to the point where it's hurt so many people. People are voting against Pierre because where's the security clearance? Why won't he get it? Like, it's so damaging. So if you have opportunities to ask questions that could be damaging or literally lie with your mainstream media platform, what's the harm in evening out the playing field a little bit and just giving the opportunity to independent media ask questions? Not slanderous questions, but just ask questions. Give the people what they want. And taking that entirely away without a contingency plan, without saying, okay, you know what? There's something going on in the background. We're going to go to intermission. We're going to go to some elbows up commercial. Did I cut out?
Nope.
No, you're good. You're good.
Nope.
So I think there's one.
We're going to go to some elbow commercial. We're going to do some skit or whatever. Have something going on in the background where they can at least figure out and get security in there and get some sort of moderation in the back rooms. Okay, what's your problem? What's your problem? How about we just separate you two? Go ask your questions as previously already figured out, and let's just move on with democracy. But removing that entirely, man, it's just an absolute disappointment to this system. And it hurts Canadians. And it's kind of demoralizing because didn't they, even with the debates, the topics, in the French one, they talked about immigration. Didn't they remove that from the English one? Or am I tripping out a little bit?
I thought there was sorry?
The topic of immigration?
Immigration. Or was that some online conspiracy?
I can't recall.
I didn't know that it was supposed to be slated and then it was removed afterwards. I didn't know of any
I think that's just the topics they decide to choose, but yeah. But
before, the day of the French debate, they came out and they said, here's what we're talking about. And then either while the French debate was happening, immediately after, they said, we're not allowing, we're not going to have a topic of immigration in the English one, but they had it in the French one. So even just stuff like that is just weird. I'm like, why do that?
Yeah, that's off. I mean,
unless I'm making it up, but that's what I saw. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe I got clickbaited.
There's so many details out there that there's no way any one of us could get all of the details of this entire election.
So why this thing was
unbelievable.
canceled, the CBC is very unambiguous about it. In that clip that I sent you, Clyde, they say that there was an incident of people, right-wing accredited people, is how they describe them, involving Rosemary Barton in the media center, and another one. Rosemary Barton fell out of her tent in front of me, but that wasn't in the media center. That's besides the point.
I think the interesting point about the security clearance thing that it gets missed is that law that forces parliamentarians not to be able to reveal what's in that report, that's a Trudeau liberal law that was actually challenged by a professor, I believe in Alberta, but don't quote me on that, but his name was Ryan Alford. And he challenged this, saying that, he's not a lawyer, but he teaches this. And he was saying that the law violates parliamentary privilege, which was the first form, parliamentarians were the first people to get free speech. And he was saying that by gagging these parliamentarians who look at this report, it's violating that, the primary form of free speech that is sacred to, our system of politics. The Ontario Superior Court ruled that the law does violate, parliamentarians' right to free expression. So, and then now it's being challenged in the Supreme Court, which is ironic, good timing that we won't know the ruling from the Supreme Court until after the election. But that's a key part that people don't realize or forget, is that the law itself is a Trudeau liberal law that some people are arguing is unconstitutional in itself.
And on the subject of a security clearance, when we were collabing, because again, it's very random who you're going to get to ask questions to. You get into the line and you don't know how long the other journalists are going to take. So it's really a bit of a guessing game, right? You almost had to do math. If Mark Carney was going to be the third guy up, you had to be the 12th guy back or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so we had to come up with questions for Polyev as well, of course. And one of them I had pitched when we were kind of collabing on different questions was, if your explanation for not having your security clearance is that you're gagged, does that mean you're committing to naming the traitors when elected prime minister? We had difficult questions. I've asked questions of Polyev at his pressers. They were challenging, difficult questions. The idea that we were partisan activists not looking to do our job of challenging every leader is patently false and incorrect. We are biased, but everyone is, right? And any journalist who pretends that they aren't biased is a liar, or they're just so apathetic they have no bias, which probably explains why they didn't get out of their seat to get in line.
I did look. I'm just doing a fact check on this. So Juno News actually covered the immigration being axed as a topic from the English federal leaders debate. So that was a thing that did happen. Yeah. Yeah, I just didn't know about it. So you're right. You're absolutely right on that.
I feel embarrassed. I didn't.
Yeah, I know. We should know that.
Yeah.
I consume way too much news, like I said.
It was a busy day. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been very busy.
But even something like that simple, right? I mean, how many people, objectively speaking, even just using social media views as the guideline, because that's a pretty decent guideline when you look at how popular something is in Canada, right? Just your average, summer day where there's no parliament, there's no press conferences. The news cycle's a little bit dull. No one cares about, Susan's cat up in a tree in Nova Scotia and 2 firemen had to go rescue it. But when they invite like a Nazi into parliament, everyone's like, whoa, crazy. Or when there's a debate, for instance, like, wow, let's tune in to see what's going on. And so when you look at the priorities of which debate should have been first, I'm French. My first language is French, and I learned English in grade 5. And I think that they should have had the English debate first and then done the French one. I think that it should have been that way. The most popular one first, right? And the fact that they had different topics for both debates, I mean, I don't know. I probably would be bitching about it if they did it the other way too. So I'm just complaining to complain, maybe.
One thing I want to pick up on.
No matter what, people will complain. It's no matter what.
I would have criticized it if it went my way now, because then I would have had a different train of thought.
I just want to pick up on what Alex was saying with the media bias. Like, I mean, even if it's just a perception of a conflict of interest, and perhaps you guys have noted this before in your various shows, but if it's a government-funded journalist, when you have one candidate vowing to cut funding from journalism, from these legacy media types, especially if you're the CBC, and then you have one who's vowing to double the funding. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you want to keep your job as one of those journalists, like even if you're trying your best to be unbiased, there's at least that you have that conflict of interest, you have that perceived bias at least, because you want one of them obviously to win so that you have job security, and that but so the idea is just of course these guys who they have an inherent bias, and I know journalists who have been paid by these government agent like CBC, and a lot of them do really try to be unbiased, but even just that echo chamber that you're in as a journalist, there's obviously going to be, and you learn this in journalism school too, is just the point is try to be as fair as possible, try to be as balanced as possible, but your biases come in the stories you decide to choose. But I don't know, I think that's just a good case for why independent media need to exist. If you're
And going back to that Michel Cormier clip where he says we don't think they're real journalists, I didn't realize that Michel Cormier could decide who is a real journalist or not. And the CBC especially should know that you don't actually have to go to journalism school to be a journalist, because some of their best journalists did not go to journalism school. Terry Malusky did not go to journalism school. Peter Mansbridge, I believe, I heard that he hasn't even graduated high school. And he was one of their most revered broadcasters for decades. A lot of their best people never went to journalism school. So I find it just ridiculous that Michel Cormier thinks that he's the arbiter of who is a journalist and who isn't.
You know who has been to journalism school?
David Menzies.
David Menzies. That's right.
No way.
Yeah, so I heard that David Menzies is the only journalist in the history of Rebel News to have gone to journalism school.
I mean, I went to journalism.
He was a blast, by the way. Meeting him was the thrill of a lifetime. Him and I got along famously. So
he's funny.
Shout out to David Menzies. Yeah, he's a very funny guy.
Yeah, you certainly don't need to go to journalism school to be a good journalist. I was being like Andrew Lawton when he was a journalist. When I first joined True North, he was giving he gave me great advice, and I would say is a better journalist than myself. I feel like I'm still a student. He didn't go to journalism school, right? But I thought it was crucial. I learned a lot of good skills. I'm not putting it completely down. You could definitely get brainwashed in these days if you even just enter a college, but yeah, I mean, if you can handle it, you can get a lot of good skills that I still use to this day. So I'm not putting that down, but it's certainly not a necessity to be to be a good reporter or to be a good journalist, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, what is an employer really looking for? Like, okay, you went to a school that taught you how to do copy, you know how to, how to write an essay, you know how to write an article, you know how to put that together. We're not gonna have to walk you,
Yeah, you just
hold
want to
your hand
be
and
able
walk
to
you
do
through
the
that.
thing that your job is. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's
yeah.
really all they're looking for, and that's what the credential actually is at the end of the day. So, I mean, today's day and age, I mean, who are some of the most successful people in the world? High school dropouts, or not high school, college dropouts. Like you look at Elon Musk and all of these characters, Thiel, all of them. They went to Silicon Valley. They're like, hey, this is good, but I could make more money and not go to school and just keep going with my career. So yeah, I mean, depends. How many people who are successful in social media went to social media school? How many people are successful YouTubers? Hey, Jasper, when did you go to YouTube school? I mean, like,
I
this
think
is
doctors
Right.
should have to go to school still.
yeah, doctors ought to.
engineers.
Yeah, I'd say.
Mechanical engineers, civil engineers. I'd like them to keep going to school, please.
So
Sure, but
is
I mean, yeah.
are they upset because because creators are showing up under the guise of journalists? Is that the triggering factor?
Yeah.
You're not a real journalist?
Yeah, so there seems to be some, like, I don't know, maybe they have some vision of what a real journalist is supposed to be. I don't know what that is. If they could maybe explain it to me, I'd appreciate that. I don't know what it entails to be a real journalist, but I'd really love it if they'd let me know.
You got to be able to toe the line, brother. That's what it is. I think
Wear
at the end of the day,
wear the liberal lanyard.
yeah, wear the liberal lanyard. That's, I guess that's the thing.
Like, I can't
Should
believe
they
the guy
change it
the guy
to
is claiming to be
creators
unbiased, and
or
he's
social
wearing a
media
liberal lanyard.
influencers? Like,
I mean,
is that the triggering part? So here's a YouTuber. Here's a question from a YouTuber or a social media creator. Like, is that what's triggering the mainstream media people? I mean, does it really matter at that point?
I think
It
what
probably
triggered
does
them-
to a degree to certain people.
I think
yeah.
what triggered them is just simple human psychology, to be honest with you. Like I said, there's a big expectation amongst your organization. They spend a lot of money to send you there, right? So you're obligated to get a question. That is your job, right? So they were just having a hissy fit because they didn't do their job. It's really that simple. Like,
It really is. Yeah. Let's get to some of these questions people have so patiently waited as they pop super chats up there. Easy Joe for 2 says, I voted. I'm doing my part. Old movie reference. Yeah, that's the way to do it. I'm waiting for voter day, the voting day, the actual election day. I'm waiting for that day. I think elections should only be held on one day. This whole early voting thing, not a big fan of it, but
we should celebrate it more. I was spitballing with a friend, and I think that we should have like an election, not to sound kind of dorky, but like an election parade where we actually get to celebrate the fact that we live in a democracy where you can vote, and people come together and they talk about, the history of Canada, and there's fireworks and there's, parades, and we just get to talk about Canadian culture, Canadian history, just kind of use it as a whole week or a weekend or a parade or whatever, an event where we just indulge ourselves in kind of like Canada Day festivities, right? Like, it's pretty exciting that we get to
I was gonna
vote
say,
and that our vote
what are you
counts.
doing on July 1st? I don't know. Maybe we could pull it off on that day, because that's what Canada Day is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the fact that we celebrate the fact that, we have freedoms, we have democracy, we have all of these things. It kind of got diluted for a while into just this wave a flag and watch the fireworks. And then we forgot about our civic duties. And then we lost Canada Day altogether. I mean, when was the last time your town had a Canada Day celebration? I know my town hasn't in a very long time. In fact, after COVID, when everyone's like, can we do the Canada Day again? In town, they said, nah, we're going to do a celebration of Natives Day instead. Like, it's awful. It's awful what's been going down. But I agree with you, Jasper. Like, we should be celebrating this fact. And more people should be getting involved and have a celebration that really focuses on that. Hey, I did my civic duty. I did my part. I helped out. and then encourage people to go even further, to not just checking the box once every 4 or 5 years, to actually get involved a little more, like we've all been doing. So yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm all for it. Jilly Pepper is gifting 5 memberships to the channel. Thank you so much, everyone who's in the chat. If you got a membership from Jilly Peppers, make sure you give a big old thank you in the chat there for her. Thank you so much. Dale Val for 5 says Stuart Smalley from the Hill. I'm guessing he's talking about Stuart, whatever his name is. Squeaky. I'm just like, what's his
Stuart Benson.
Stuart Benson, that's right. From the Hill, definitely stated it, but I missed the ending because CBC reporter Rosemary Barton blocked 80% of my by-screen TV.
Okay, funny. But I have to say, because like I saw Rosemary Barton in person, she was laid out in front of me on the ground. She tripped falling out of her tent. And you know what? She is actually a pretty...
No kidding.
Yeah, but she is a pretty lady. She, you know what they say, the camera adds 10 pounds. I think it might be true. Like in real life, she was pretty good looking. Like
how many cameras were on her?
That's a big camera.
I'd go out with her if it wasn't for her personality, but like she was fine. She was honestly
she tripped and fell.
Yeah, she tripped and fell right in front of me. So I would go behind the Power and Politics refugee tent for cigarettes. Right, I smoke too much and should probably.
Do you think that was her? Like she was embarrassed and said a right-wing reporter knocked her over or something?
No, it was she. It was
Rebel
she was
News
really
cable.
oblivious to the fact I was there. So I'm smoking a cigarette behind their little refugee tent, and all of a sudden I just hear something hit the ground, and I hear somebody yell, "Are you okay?" And I look around the corner, and there's Rosemary
over
Barton
my noise-canceling headphones.
and she looked really sad, and I felt bad for her. So maybe that's why, like, she was maybe like, yeah, I thought she was
you know what?
All
the grief we've given Stuart Benson, like he at least, like, when I said, hey, I'm Clayton Domain with True North, can I get a can I ask you about this? He at least like was nice enough to like give me a response on camera. He essentially just said he didn't think it was his outburst that like caused the scene, but like he's people are complex, and some people could be nice even though they have opinions that and outbursts like that are not very cool. But
okay, so
whatever.
I'll give you an example of this guy. So here's another scenario with the same reporter. Here he is giving a question. This is back in February of this year, asking a question to Michael Barrett. This is the kind of guy, he's just argumentative in questioning.
I think unelected party advisors and unelected candidates should be subject to the same disclosure rules as candidates. What's the difference between Carney advising Trudeau and someone like Jenny Byrne advising your party's leader?
Okay, I'm happy to explain to you the difference between someone sitting in the Prime Minister's office and someone not sitting in the Prime Minister's office. So Mark Carney,
oh my God,
who was sitting in the Prime Minister's office, was an advisor to Justin Trudeau, and at the same time that he was an advisor to Justin Trudeau, I listed, while you wandered off, I listed a number of examples of how his company benefited from decisions that the government that he was advising was taking. All the while, he wasn't being subjected to the standard disclosure rules that exist for someone who's advising the Prime Minister. Now, it's easy for Canadians to see why that conflict is something that we need to have rules to prevent, and the rules that existed, they went to great pains to avoid, including at committee, days and days across multiple committees of Liberals filibustering to ensure that Mark Carney, in his role as an advisor to the Prime Minister, who was not being subjected, who was being shielded from Canada's ethics laws, they also shielded him from coming to a parliamentary committee. It's absolutely unacceptable that they've teed this up to have him avoid.
So that was just a taste of his form of questioning.
To Clayton's point, though, like, there's maybe 20 minutes, let's say, of us all being, frankly, like, immature. Like, obviously some were worse than others. But amongst that time, there was 12 hours, I think, we all spent together, and we were all getting along famously. Like, I was joking around about well, Clayton maybe doesn't think so. I'm just like a friendly person. So like I got along really well with this girl, Nikki from Politico. She was cool. I had joked around. We were talking about going for karaoke after, I was telling Judy Tran, I bet you're good at karaoke. And, we were trying to keep it light and get it. For the most part, it was pretty copacetic.
But that guy there, Stuart Benson, like there's other videos like Kareem Assad, or I guess her videographer there. But like he's, taking photos of them. And so there is also another history of him like going after independent reporters and, people he deems to be right wing, I suppose, even though I wouldn't ever classify Kareem Assad as such. But I'm hoping I'm saying her name right. But anyway, so there is this history of this same guy doing outbursts like this and acting in such ways.
And that's okay, right? There's different ways of doing journalism, right? And like if you're a little bit feisty, like that's some people like that, and it's not everybody's flavor. And if that's the kind of journalist he wants to be, that's fine. But this is different. This is assaulting. Like, well, I'm not going to use the word assaulting. I think that's a bit of an embellishment and an exaggeration. But when you're yelling at people that are supposed to be your colleagues, that's I think crossing. That's a bridge too far.
That's the liberal definition of assault.
Yeah, well, I guess I was assaulted this last week. But
yeah.
too much. We have VIPT Cruiser for 2 says Hill Times reporter was the threat to security.
But not according to the CBC. For what that's worth.
For what that's worth. Then there was no threat to security. It's just all just a fabrication entirely. But that lends credulity to what Vesper posted of what's his name? Michel Cormier and what he had to say.
And there were
Jevon
all day. So Clyde, you were saying that you predicted that there would be no scrum.
I predicted that they would either do shenanigans or just call it off.
And Clayton was predicting that there was going to be shenanigans. And there were rumors all day. One rumor that came out very early that I recall was that there would be no follow-ups this time. Which I assume was to accommodate more reporters, which presumably, that
would be fair.
That's sensible. But all day we were hearing that there might be no scrum, that they were going to split up the orders. And so it was really strange. And then to have the police show up and them shut down the whole thing, just like it could not have ended in a more surreal fashion.
We got Jevon Jandrew with a $6.99 super chat says, I'm in Alberta. We still celebrate Canada Day here. Well, thank goodness for that. That's
soon to be America.
Yeah, you guys might be celebrating Alberta Day coming up. That might be your national holiday. We'll see, depending on what happens next Monday. Whoa boy. That could go one of two ways. Rick Yem for 5 says Sunshine Baby has to do some research on governments. They don't want us getting together. Well, we've seen that. Absolutely. I don't think that's a dig, more of just a joke. But yeah, they don't want us getting together. The last time we all got together in that sort of way, Tamara and Chris are still waiting their sentencing for that.
This time around, we'll just wear some keffiyehs and bring some Palestine flags, and we'll trick them.
You're on to something.
Well, that was the thing. So like people were like, nobody could say anything bad about this. It's like every color under the rainbow is hanging out at this freedom convoy. How could anyone say anything bad about this? There was Sikh people, there was, people from all different walks in lives and everything.
Well, and the same was true of our independent media cohort. We were far more diverse in our own little 9 group of 10 than the rest of the aggregate journalists put together. Drea Humphrey and Alexa Lavoie and I were talking about that. Alexa Lavoie says, my father is Métis. She goes, Drea is black and you were from Surrey.
And you're from Surrey. That's
all the boxes.
We have all the minorities on our side.
There you go.
Oh, too funny. Got another one from Schween Machine. I love the name, by the way. 279. What do you think will happen when CBC is defunded? I think they'll have to compete. I don't think it's the end of the CBC. if they're defunded. I just think it's the end of the malarkey that you get from the CBC. Like if they actually have to provide a service that people will want to see and that advertisers will pay to be on, then a lot of the crap, let's just say a lot of the crap will be gone.
Drag story to kids.
Is that CBC is behind that?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm pretty sure.
And it's not like all the name recognition goes out the window. Like how many people trust the CBC right now? Like do they, if they aren't funded by the taxpayer, did they just lose all that trust? Like I think that they would do well enough for themselves in comparison to other outlets. Like, you know.
Yeah.
75% layoffs is what I think. They're going to lay off about 75% of people. They're going to give up a lot of their real estate that they have, and production quality might come down a little bit, but I think they're going to slow bleed. How can they compete without the government subsidies? Can they get sponsors? Can they raise funds? Maybe private donors? I don't know, but it's not going to be, they're not going to be CBC as we know it. It's going to be significantly different. It might be for the better. You might see private donors to CBC that say, okay, well, now we own 10% of your company and we don't want you to do that anymore. You might see a power shift like that, which could be good.
I don't think that's unreasonable to think that 75% of it will be dropped. I mean, 75% of it is just bloat anyway, right?
And again, maybe I'm being too kind here, but I think it's also important to make a distinction between the institution and the people. Because some of the people there, again, Clayton will probably roll his eyes while I say this, but some of the CBC employees were really nice. Like I really enjoyed talking to them. And so, yes, I abhor the institution, but some of the individuals are good people. And that's true of every institution, I imagine.
Yeah.
Every large one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair to say. But yeah, I think the CBC, there are like, staples of the CBC that people will want to get back to. And I think because of that, there'll be actual like demand for things, and then they'll go in that direction. I hope, because I think that would be a good business move anyway to do that. Bring back the log riders waltz, bring back a lot of things, and I don't know, bring back entertainment for kids that's not, I don't know, sexualized. That would be.
I remember when the CBC
nice.
was playing Kenny versus Spenny was one of my favorite shows. I thought it was just absolutely hilarious. I don't know if anybody else enjoyed it. It was great. Remember those two roommates that used to like who can drink the most beer or who can stay awake the longest? They'd have these competitions. And no, all right,
not at all.
Is CBC a publicly traded company?
It was great.
No,
CBC,
no, it's a crown corporation.
Yeah. Okay, so you might see it have to IPO. You might see public funding, and that's when it gets to that point where I think you're going to start to see more integrations of people like us, content creators, independent journalists in CBC having reoccurring segments from the left, from the right, from the center, crossovers to try and attract the new age. That's what I think it would be really good for CBC.
I don't think Clayton and I are welcome back there ever again.
Well, maybe not right now, but under a reconstruction of the corporation, right?
Well, I think Jasper's onto something. Like if it was privately owned and they were actually looking for an audience, reaching out to people on the other side of the aisle, which is insane that the CBC has a side of the aisle. It should never have been on one side of the aisle, but it is. And yeah, I think you're onto something. If they really wanted to, make a good business run at it, they would grab people from both sides of the aisle. And then
it's like that
Upton
Sinclair quote, right? Where it's like, it's very hard for a man to see something when his salary depends on him not seeing it.
Keep the main people, keep the bald head guy, keep Rosemary, right? But bring on someone from the independent crowd who has an audience that can bring a whole bunch of new viewers to the space and add, opposite views, and then get rid of all the small little pilot programs they've done, like Men That Dress Like Women that read to kids and stuff like that. Like CBC has a real opportunity to be something great. It just needs a full deconstruction, start from the ground up. You can keep some of the main people. You can. Keep power in politics, keep that stuff, but bring on a form of an opposition.
Well, it's interesting
And-
what you say about an IPO. So Chorus Entertainment, which I believe is the parent company for Global News, it's a penny stock right now, and I think the market cap is the equivalent to like two duplexes in Vancouver. Like you could buy Global News.
It's been
like,
going down forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you could sell 2 duplexes in Vancouver and probably buy the parent company for Global News, which I don't know why Elon Musk or some, Kevin O'Leary, some rich person doesn't do that. Somebody who's on the right side of the political spectrum.
Let's bring all YouTubers together and buy Global. But I mean, what is Global in Canada?
And hire Rachel Gilmore and then fire her just to do it.
But what is Global? Like the Global News doesn't have the reach that CBC does. CBC can remain this staple of Canada and attract a new audience, right? A lot of the boomers are the ones that are holding on to CBC. Keep 25% of what you've had, because it does need to be defunded. You are not doing justice to Canada by being subsidized by our tax dollars and having such an influence for one political party time and time and time again. So remove some of that funding, remove 75% of the pilot programs, just off the top of my head. Right? Some people are probably going to lose their job as an unfortunate collateral of this reconstruction, but you can build something from the ground up and still keep your main people, your main headliners, the bald guy who's apparently so important I don't even know his name, and Rosary, whatever the hell her name is, too, right? But they're people that have influence on Canada, right?
Like the Spice.
I don't even know their names. Whatever.
The ones. See, the thing is, the ones with talent, even if the like CTV goes under,
is it Rosemary?
I think it's Rosemary.
Yeah,
Barton,
Rosemary Barton and David.
I thought she was Rosie. I thought she was Rosie Barton. That's what her Twitter handle is anyway.
They bring in clicks and views, so keep them, keep a few other people, and then bring in. Like, I'm really surprised that the mainstream media hasn't done this already, where they've integrated content creators that can bring a lot of views to the table and open the discussion for panels like this or debates or
they don't need to
analysts.
They don't need to. They already get paid. So this is when you put the cart before the horse, right? You're paying them ahead of time, and then they just got to make a bunch of content. So it's not going to be like content with the explicit, like, we need to make money and make a business model that will drive revenue. They're just like, we just got to make stuff. And as long as we're friendly to the power elites right now, just crank stuff out. Like, that's it. Doesn't even have to be high quality. You want a conservative guy? Yeah, get that Andrew Coyne guy in. Yeah, he's totally the right wing guy. And then that's it. They're in such a bubble, they don't even realize that that's just absurd. Right?
But even from a non-monetary gain perspective, just bringing in, independent creators that have a large influence, because it's undeniable now, right? People put out videos, get hundreds of thousands of views, and actually outperform some of the same topics that what the mainstream media tries to do on social media. So they're only getting views on the television on certain topics, and other topics they're completely shitting the bed on social media, where people like us are picking up that tab. And so combining the two to kind of unite Canada a little bit, left and right, and just a different perspective to be able to explain this bubble, I think would be really good. I don't think there's a single content creator out there that said, if you could get the bald guy, would you interview the bald guy from CBC or Rosemary Barton on your channel?
Course,
right?
absolutely.
Everybody would say, sure, why not?
Yeah, like
I think there's a disconnect. I think they disrespect like what it is that we do. I think they don't like what we do. They don't like what we represent. And
hey, the feeling's mutual. I don't respect what they do. I don't respect them and their views. The feeling's fucking mutual. Great.
But I was saying, like, a good journalist, and more importantly, a good person, will talk to anyone. Right. And so what Clayton and I did is, like, even when we weren't at the debates, we were on the street working from 7 a.m. until the debates, doing streeters. We were in the gay village in Montreal, which has got to be one of the most leftist places in the entire country. And we were talking to people, we were listening to them, hearing about what their biggest issues were in the election. You know, we talked to everybody. You know, I called it the communist gay village because
Yeah.
they were actual communists there.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of their issues was there wasn't enough communism, but yeah,
Yeah, unironically. Yeah.
that
And that
people
was
didn't
great.
listen to Karl Marx enough. But yeah, but
Yeah, and we-
nevertheless, there were issues. Yeah.
But we could talk to them, we could engage with them, we could have civil discourse, we could have dialogue. I don't think that Tantrum Boy has ever gone to Alberta and talked to conservatives in Alberta, but he should. You know, he should maybe broaden his horizons and get some more social skills by talking to different types of people.
I think that's a great outlook. That's a great way of looking at things. And you know, it's hard. It's difficult for people from our perspective to try to entice people in the left wing to come on the show. I'm very grateful to Julian Newman. He's been fantastic to actually come on and engage with myself and other guests, because he's definitely on the left. He's not shy about that, but at least he's willing to engage. So I mean, he's a unicorn in that regard.
We had my friend Daryl on. We had my friend Daryl on, as you may recall, who was on the left, and him and I we felt differently about the Palestine-Israel issue, and we were able to engage in civil dialogue. There's no reason that the leftist media, the media cartel can't do the same thing. Like, just be adults, be nice. It's that simple.
They're afraid of platforming it because they're popular ideas. They catch on, and that's the whole thing. Got another one from Mr. Roscoe Pico for 5, says biggest threat to CBC broadcaster is leaving a job with the reputation of a liar or for traitors. Yeah, that's a big issue. That's where we're at. You got another one from VIPT Cruiser for 5, says I would prefer a tax credit for voting instead of a fine for not voting like Australia to help get the vote out. What do you guys think of that? That's actually an interesting one. Give people a voucher if you vote, like you get paid to vote, not obviously not to vote for a particular party, but you get paid to give a vote. What do you think?
$50 off your taxes.
Yeah, I'm open-minded to it. Why not? We give tax credits for dumber things than that.
Yeah, lots of dumber things.
We give CBC billions of bucks, so there you go. Why not $50 or $10 off of everybody's taxes who vote?
Yeah, actually, I hadn't heard that idea. That's the first I've heard of that. That's,
yeah, me too. I've never heard that either.
Yeah, that one definitely, I like it. So I want to thank you guys for coming tonight. This has been awesome. Alex, of course, you've been on the show a whole ton of times. Let me get the names on here so everybody knows who everybody is, because also links in the description down below for everybody who wants to find everybody's socials. Thank you so much, Mr. Sunshine Baby Jasper, for coming on, having this chat with us. I got to break this story to you. That was awesome. I got your live reaction to that. Alex Zoltan, as always, a pleasure. It's fantastic having you, and you've got some always interesting perspective when you bring some of these stories, man. And definitely always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And Clayton Domain, thank you so much. Very first time on the show. And a pleasure to meet you. I didn't get your socials to put in the description. Where can people find you?
Yeah, well, you can look at my stuff that's published on Juno News, written by True North. But Clay, it's at Clay Domain on X. You could find me, and I'm just posting all my articles on there as well.
Awesome. I'll make sure to update the description so everybody
He's a great
can
journalist.
find you.
I recommend everybody give him a follow. He taught me a lot of great things. So I was really grateful to have him there.
Yeah, thank you for joining tonight. It was a real
Thanks
pleasure
for having
chatting
me
with you.
and us. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you guys stick around on the line. Don't hang up, but we'll just close out the stream here. Thank you guys all so much for joining in tonight. It's a pleasure to have you guys all come out and have these conversations. It's fantastic. I'm glad a lot of people are paying attention right now. It's an election season, so a lot more people are paying attention. So take full advantage of this to bring these conversations to the forefront and take the opportunity to bring more people together. I like seeing this. I want to see more of this. People who are in journalism and YouTubing and all of this stuff coming together for more conversations. So we'll have more of this stuff in the months to come. Well, we got a week left of this election, but stick around. And in the months to come, we'll have lots more of these conversations. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the morning. Keep on trucking.